Today's guest is an actress that has been present in my life as long as I can remember, a mom and one of the stars of the new incredible film, Come On, Come On. Welcome, Gaby Hoffman. Hi, Gaby.
Hi.
So starting off personal, you have been such a fixture in my life, and I feel like in a sense I've grown up with you. As a child, I saw you in Sleepless in Seattle, Uncle Buck, Field of Dreams, Now and Then, which was like my favorite. And then as you got older, you took on projects like Girls and Transparent, and now Come On, Come On, where you're a mom with
and
just
maintenance. Oh,
yes, high maintenance.
I was not in high maintenance.
Oh no, so your sister. Sorry, your sister Alex, who I also know.
I mean, maybe I was in for a second, but I love high maintenance.
Yes.
I just had a moment where I was like, was I in high maintenance?
Your sister, who I also know, well, I don't know you, was in high maintenance. Sorry.
Yes.
So I feel like you've gone through these. You've been as a character in the same place as your life as I am. And now we're both moms at the same time. Do you find that a lot of women kind of just naturally relate to you because of this?
Yeah, I guess so. I always know when somebody is a big Now and Then fan that they're usually a few years younger than me. So are you like in your early to mid 30s?
I'm in now my late 30s, 36.
Really? Oh, well, that's mid 30s.
Is it? Okay. All right. We'll go with it. I'll take it.
You're about 3 or 4 years younger than me. Because when we were making Now and Then, I was 12, and Christina Ricci and we were going to see Pulp Fiction every weekend at the movie theater. We saw it every weekend for like 17 weekends in a row.
That's such good for a teenager's psyche.
Yeah. So we were not the Now and Then audience. We were like smoking cigarettes and watching Pulp Fiction and causing a ruckus.
I think you and I are a similar age. I'm 43.
Okay. I'm about to be 40 in a few. Yeah. So I'm right in between you guys. And, but my sister is 51. She'll be 51 when I turn 40. So she's 11 years older than me. And so I really kind of I grew up with my sister and her crowd. So I veer older, which works for me, or has at least. I think that, it's a certain kind of woman, maybe more so, that is expresses appreciation, I guess, for seeing somebody that maybe looked a little bit or felt a little bit more like they did. That's what I get more. Yeah.
That makes sense. I can understand that.
Yeah.
I saw Come On, Come On at the Montclair Film Festival, and I saw it was a date night with my baby daddy, and both of us just were so touched. It's such a beautiful film. I have to say, your work resonated with me so much in the place that I am postpartum, my daughter being 3 years old. It was so incredibly beautiful. So thank you for that. And you did.
Thank you.
It made my baby daddy do my favorite thing that he does, which is pretend he's not crying and just use his shirt to wipe away sweat, which yes, because evidently he doesn't want to. Anyway, so in the film, Come On, Come On, you play the sister of Joaquin Phoenix's character, Johnny, and the mother to 9-year-old Jesse, who is amazing. I just read an interview with him where he's like, I've had a very full career. Yeah. Can you tell the listeners better than I did a little bit about what the film was about and your experience in the film?
Well, I'll tell you guys the story of the film, and I leave it up to everybody who sees it to determine what they think it's about. What happens in it is Joaquin's character, Johnny, who's a radio journalist who's in the midst of a nationwide project where he's interviewing kids about the future. His character calls his sister, played by me, on the day of the anniversary of their mother's death. And they have been estranged since then. And he happens to catch her in a moment when she is in need of some help, because she has to go help her baby daddy who's struggling with he's bipolar and he's having an episode. And so she needs somebody to hang out with her son. So Joaquin, who is the uncle to her son, comes, and they begin what is, in my mind, a love story. They've met, of course, before, but they don't know each other. And they have an immersive experience, both at home, at the child's home, and on the road, in multiple cities in America, wherein they, in my mind, more or less fall in love. So, and all the while, my character is attending to her larger family life and sort of weighing in with guidance at times, or just an ear at others, over the phone with her brother.
So based off of what, we've both seen the film. You're in the film, you know what it's about. But for those people who have not yet, one of the things that I found really fascinating was, for me, this story was really about motherhood and how complex that role really is, and how there's no guide for moms to get it right, but rather we're kind of just running around, acting out of love, trying to do what's right, juggling all of these different responsibilities. I know you said you were going to say what the synopsis is about, what happens in the story, but does that kind of resonate with you? Does that ring true for you about what the film is truly, the meat and potatoes?
Yeah, I mean, I think this movie is so dynamic and so rich and deep and complex, even though it's presented with such a delicate, subtle, not simplistic, but kind of simple. Just, it has so much space and time, which to me offers the audience a more interactive and deep experience of watching it, because they have time to sort of be in dialogue with themselves. But so it kind of presents as, small and subtle and sweet and about these very simple things. But yes, to me, it's about everything. It's certainly about everything that my life is about as a mother. And it's very much about the complexity of parenting. I mean, we could say all parenting is mothering, regardless of your gender. I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I often get this question. I got it just the other night about how I feel about the fact that sometimes it seems like, Viv, you're right on the edge of being a bad mother. And I'm always surprised by that. And it's always because it turns out she's not with her kid. And it always prompts this conversation, which I think is a lot of what you're talking about, of me saying, like, well, being a mother is extremely complicated. And a lot of the time, what you're doing might seem contradictory to what the child, quote unquote, needs in the moment, because taking care of the act of loving isn't always super obvious, right? So like a small example would be, your kid desperately wants you to sit down and do a drawing with them, and they need your attention and your presence and your focus. But if you don't finish making dinner, they're going to be starving and having a meltdown, and then they're not going to get to bed in time. And then the next day they're, so actually Viv being away from her kid, taking care of her kid's father so that her kid has a father, is an essential act of mothering. And one of the many moments where you're pulled in 1,000 different directions and you have to figure out how to balance it all. It's all such a cliche, and it's all so true, right? And so that's happening every second of the day in terms of the health of the family, right? That the mother is usually at the center of, regardless of if she has a wonderful partner or not. It just seems to be the case. Or if there's two mothers, I'm sure that those roles find their way. And then there's the actual woman and her needs and all of that, which usually are
God forbid.
Yeah. So, yes, I think this movie is very much about all of that. And I think even Joaquin's character is in an example of this, right? He is parenting, mothering, whatever we want to call it, really for the first time. And through his experience, we're seeing just how complicated it can be, almost with this sweet lens of like the novice, right?
Right.
And I often, think about the movie in the terms of like, it's a movie about how hard it is to love and care for each other. Like it's the thing we're here to do, as far as I'm concerned. It's the best thing to do. It's the only thing to do, but it's really tricky emotionally, practically, psychologically, physically. Like it's fucking hard to caretake. And this is a movie about two people who are both devoted to doing that. Caretaking this child, caretaking each other, caretaking their partners, their friend, and it shows it in all of its complexity. Yeah.
I was going to say, one of the reasons why Ashley and I started this podcast is we didn't really see a lot of ourselves reflected in, whether it's movies or whatever. I didn't really see a lot of myself. Both of us were reluctant mothers for varying different reasons. And just seeing you portray a woman who's an artist, who is raising her kid on her own terms, who it really resonated with me, because I had a father who was mentally ill, who my mom sometimes had to spend time with and not with me to take care of.
Oh, wow.
And I had an uncle that came to live with us to help raise me. So
oh my God.
I wonder, it touched me so much. And even just the moments in how you're parenting your kids spoke so much to me. It was parenting in not a dumbed down way. It was parenting as respecting that soul as an equal.
Yeah.
And the movie had so much to offer. Listen to me, I'm like Siskel and Ebert. The movie had so much to offer, because also all those little tiny sections with the kids talking about what they want think the future is going to be like.
Yeah.
I mean, just so many different layers that make the movie really important. And one of the things, Johnny reads this passage in the film from your character, or from Jacqueline Rose's essay, Mothers, on Love and Cruelty. It says, motherhood is the place in our culture where we lodge, or rather bury, the reality of our own conflicts, of what it means to be fully human. It is the ultimate scapegoat for our personal and political failings, for everything that is wrong with the world, which it becomes the task, unrealizable, of course, of mothers to repair. What are we doing to mothers when they expect them to carry the burden of everything that is hardest to contemplate about society and ourselves? Mothers cannot help but be in touch with the most difficult aspects of any fully lived life. Why on earth should it fall to them to paint these bright and innocent and safe?
I had to rewind the screener like 4 times to get that all down, because I was just like, this shit is too good. This is too good.
That is basically our ethos, period. Why do we have to make it shiny? Why does it have to be like that? And I think just that, I mean, it's not really a question. That was just like one of those awesome moments where like, yes.
You know what I think when I hear that today? I think, yes. And that's why mothers, or those who are mothering,
right,
parenting with a real awake, thoughtful approach, should be running the fucking world. Like, we know what it's about. We know we're having this experience about the nuts and bolts of all of it. So yeah. It's true. And there's a lot in there that is very, very useful that the world seems to need right now. So,
Yep. So on a personal level, there's so many to choose from now. What is your biggest motherhood parenting challenge? Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's my biggest challenge, but something that I'm thinking about a lot right now. My daughter is about to turn 7 on Friday, the day the movie comes out.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you.
You have a Scorpio daughter too. I have a Scorpio daughter.
You do?
Oh, Godspeed to you both.
So when's her birthday?
It was October 30th. She's at the very cusp. Thank you.
And she turned 3?
She turned 3. 3 going on 46.
Yeah. What's her name?
Luna Mars.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. And how about you, Ashley? What have you got?
I had a 4-year-old son named Sebastian. He's, I I hate to ascribe to gender roles and everything and gender norms, but he's crazy. He's
a sweet boy. He's really sweet.
Very sweet, but it's a whole other game. I didn't grow up with boys. So for me, I'm like, this is what you creatures are like. This is too much for me. But yeah,
I have a girl and a boy, and without talking about anybody else's kid, they're very much a girl and boy.
Yeah.
And we didn't do anything about that. I have a 3-year-old boy. So the thing I'm thinking about a lot these days is, are you ladies familiar with Winnicott, D.W. Winnicott?
No.
Oh, Momtourage.
Educate us.
Get on it.
This is good stuff. So Winnicott was a child psychologist in the 50s in England, and his writing is interesting. I actually was introduced to him through other people writing about him. Alison Bechtel writes about him, and Mark Epstein, who is a very important person to read about everything, writes very well about him. And he talks about it was the 50s. So he used the term the good enough mother. We will now say the good enough parent. Although I'm into
good enough person.
Let's just call it all mothering. And he described, I won't do it justice here, but more or less it's this idea that obviously there's no such thing as the perfect parent, but that's not even what you're striving for. And what he means by good enough is create an environment for your child wherein they know that they are safe, physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. They are safe, they are loved, and then let them be. Give them all the tools they need so that they can figure out who they are without your distracting them, imposing upon them your ideas of who they should be or who they are or who you want them to be or what is good and right and interesting. And without being overbearing, right? Without overhandling them in their pursuit of themselves. So let them fall, let them hurt themselves, let them get back up. Of course you're there if they're really hurt and they need help. Of course you're there if they're really struggling and they need help. You're not abandoning them, but you're giving them the space, right? To start to develop a relationship with themselves without you constantly laying the groundwork for them. And of course it's tricky, even just hearing myself saying like, without imposing what you think is good or interesting, like that's probably not accurate because you are providing for them. I mean, how could you not? Things that you think are good and interesting for them to engage with and respond to, but you're not imposing your desires and your needs upon them or your fears, right?
It's like the extreme opposite of helicopter parenting.
Right.
Extreme opposite of helicopter parenting. It's the extreme opposite of like a narcissistic style of parenting, right? Like,
thank God.
It's really trying to let it be about them without creating a situation in which they're in charge, right? Or that the world revolves around them. So this is what I've been thinking about. It's very easy for me to do that with a 3-year-old. I mean, it's extremely easy for me to do that with a baby. I could have a newborn baby for the rest of my life. It's trickier and trickier and trickier for me as they get older. So dealing with a 7-year-old girl, an almost 7-year-old girl who is incredibly smart, incredibly intuitive, incredibly observant, and very willful, and has very strong opinions and personalities, and just sort of like being in conversation with myself about where it all starts and ends, right? Like how much to offer, how much to hold back, how much to challenge, like just where that kind of amorphous, ever shifting line of her and me, and the space of her space and our shared space. And that part is tricky. Like, and then the biggest challenge for me, okay, sorry, this is a very, very long answer. The biggest challenge for me is in those moments with her where I am confronted with my own impatience, my own rage,
Yep.
my own. So sorry, this is what I was getting to. I got distracted. So somebody was describing, Mark Epstein was describing the good enough parent, and somebody in the audience said, or I think Mark said, it's also being able to handle your child's rage, right? Like not impose your reaction, your feeling onto them, and let them have their own experience. And then somebody in the audience said, well, that sounds like being able to handle your own rage. So that area of the good enough parenting kind of idea is where I really struggle, where I'm like, you have your feelings, you have your experience. I can sit here, I can be a witness to that. And I can be physically present if you need me, I am here. That I could do all day long. When my shit comes up, because I was not raised in a way to learn to manage my own emotions, that was not modeled for me. When my shit comes up and I am confronted with all of the stuff I'm still struggling with, and I know I don't want to impose that upon my daughter, I'm just at a loss. Like I usually just have to say, I'm really sorry, I have to leave the room first.
Let me just tell you, there's a reason why there's the rage in Momtourage. Ashley and I, unfortunately, are kind of hot-blooded folks. And so that speaks to me like.
Yep.
So
also, I just want to say, anytime you want to come on the show and just talk about real parenting shit like this,
anytime,
please feel free, because this is, we talk to so many parents, but this is such a real conversation, and everyone can relate to that, you know?
Well, it's so interesting because last night I was like, oh God, I've got to, my husband, the kids were asleep, and he was like, let's do X, Y, and Z. And I was like, no, I've got to listen to this podcast, not yours. Because I'm being asked to do it and I don't want to do it because it's related to the Oscars, and I find all of that very uncomfortable and weird. And but I should listen to it before I say I don't want to do it. And then my husband was like, you really should don't you want to just be having conversations about motherhood? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, you should just why don't you just start a conversation or a podcast about motherhood? Like that's what you're supposed to be talking about right now.
Some advice.
And then I looked at the rest of my schedule and I was like, that's what I'm doing.
So let me say, Ashley and I consider ourselves longtime New Yorkers. I just moved out of New York during the pandemic, but have lived there for almost 30 years. Ashley has grown up as well, New York adjacent / New York. So we know that you grew up in the Chelsea Hotel with your mom, who was a Warhol muse, and even inspired a kid's book called Gaby at the Chelsea. I mean, that's I'm a real New Yorker flex. Like that is some top tier action.
Like no one in LA can be like, you're not a New Yorker.
Now
like,
I'm living in LA.
Right. Yes. No one can say that to you. You're like, I am the New Yorker.
Yes. So what was it like growing up there?
It was actually really great. Looking back on it, I have an incredible amount of appreciation for it. At the time, I was raised on sitcoms, and I just wanted to live in a suburban house with a white picket fence and an upstairs. And
that's what we have now.
Yep. And I wanted that because I thought, of course, foolishly, that if I had that, I would have a normal family.
Right.
But I got that eventually and ran screaming back to New York.
Right.
But the Chelsea was great because it really was like, I describe it as almost like a little cul-de-sac. Like it was a little neighborhood. It was a little community where I had a lot of freedom and I had a lot of people in my life. So I was running around that place as early as, 4 years old by myself, barefoot. I knew everybody. I had friends on every floor. My best friend lived above me. I basically lived at her house. I knew everybody in the lobby. So it was actually this real community. And actually the city at that time, even though people think of the 80s in Manhattan as being, really rough, and it was, but it was also a lot more sane in my mind, because It was all New Yorkers. It was all your community. It wasn't filled with tourists and a bunch of rich assholes who bought an apartment there and live somewhere else and who knows what they're doing. And every other store wasn't a Starbucks or a Chase Bank. It was owned by people that knew you. So it was the Jane Jacobs, the Jacobian model of, on some level of, a neighborhood. So I had the Chelsea, which was really like that. And I even had like my block on 23rd Street where I knew the guys in the deli and I knew the guys at the comic book store next door. And I saw the same homeless guy on the stoop every day and knew him, so I had a lot of independence and a lot of freedom because there were a lot of eyes and ears on me all the time.
I do. We just went back to our old apartment just this last weekend, and my daughter, who lived, a couple of years of her life there before we moved here, and it all came flooding back to her. She's like, I want to move back. She's like, I miss Sam at the deli. She was like, I miss the juice guy.
Yeah.
And she even said, I miss the parts where the rats are in the park, where we used to chase the rats in the park. I was like, I know, me too.
Yeah. My daughter really misses the stoop.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Stoop sitting.
Oh my God. Our stoop is like, it's kind of famous in our neighborhood. We live in an apartment in a brownstone. So we have neighbors in our building and they like live on the stoop, and it's a real fun scene. And yeah, there, you can't beat the stoop in the deli.
Yep.
So I'm going to ask you one last question, and it's what we ask all of our moms, and that is, or all of our parents, all of the people who do mothering.
What's the number one thing you think every mom, parent, whoever should outsource if they have the means to do so?
I am the worst person to ask this question to because I am really, really bad at doing this. The only outsourcing that we do, we don't have any childcare, and we have once a week, and this is a big for me. We have somebody come once a week and do a deep clean of our house.
That's amazing.
I don't mop my floors.
Yeah.
Unless there is an accident.
Right.
And that's a real privilege. That is not something most people can have. But God, it is nice. So that is the only outsourcing I do is like the big once over clean. If I could, here's what I would outsource in LA. I fucking hate to grocery shop in LA. It is so soul sucking and horrible. The stores are giant. The parking lots are giant. I never want to go there again. So I buy $1,000 worth of, not quite that much, but I throw the cart until things are tumbling onto the ground and breaking and smashing because I think maybe I'll never have to come back here again if I just get enough stuff. So there's all that. You know what? Hopefully next time I talk to you guys, I'll have a really good answer for this because it's probably something that I should figure out for myself.
I mean,
that was a great answer.
We asked it because Ashley and I have trouble asking for help.
Yeah.
We have trouble acknowledging that, which is why we ask this so that we continue to ask ourselves.
Yeah.
We're like control freaks.
Right.
So
I'm a Virgo.
That's why we asked this question.
I will say that I do ask a lot of, we have an incredible community here of friends and parents, and we're all helping each other all the time. We're all picking up each other's kids, taking them home. We're bringing each other food. My husband sprained his ankle a few weeks ago and I was out of town, and I immediately, made sure that people were bringing him food. So I do ask for a lot of help from my friends. And I think that's essential. It's just the more like, hired, there's something about like the hired help, like the outsourcing of the roles that used to be done by others in the family, whether it was like the auntie or the grandma or the sister or the uncle, that part is harder for me. Yeah.
Carrie once asked me to drive her to JFK and I flat out was like, no, absolutely not. I love you. You're my best friend, but no, I'm sorry. Get an Uber.
Worse would be LAX. LAX is worse. That's a bigger ask than JFK.
Well, we did just have people come and visit, and my husband picked them up from the airport. We live really far from LAX, and he was recovering from a twisted ankle, and it fucked him up to drive to and from. And so I was going to drive them, and then I said, this is something I will pay for an Uber. Like at my time, I have to say, my time is worth
Yep.
that.
I was going to say those friends owe you a kidney now.
Yeah.
If you were going to do
They
that.
took an
Yep.
Uber. They took an Uber.
Yeah.
The drive to the airport, it's not necessary. I agree.
Yeah.
Mm,
Well, please,
no.
it was so just wonderful chatting with us. Please come
Yes.
back anytime. We would love
Yes.
to talk all the nitty gritty about parenting and any wisdom you have.
Because
Please.
you seem to have so much, not only that you've so much, but you're so
You've done your homework.
you can speak about it so like intelligently and so well informed, where I'm just like, I don't know what to do, but you put to words all the things happening inside of me. So
well, thank you. I hope that's true. I'm not sure that it is. It's a lot easier to talk about than it is to do.
True.
yes.
That's why we have a podcast. Those who can't do, teach,
Yes.
which is the worst saying ever. Thanks for joining us. Plug yourself, plug the film, plug anything else that you want to draw attention to, any causes, anything. Do your thing.
Oh my God, I'm not capable of that. Sorry. I mean, I love the movie. I will say that I really, really love this movie. And I think that, if you're interested in seeing a movie that is about this life here and now and all the important things that we're navigating and struggling with and taking pleasure in and thinking about, this is it. And I guess it comes out on November 19th, which is in a few days. Come on.
Awesome.
And happy birthday to your daughter.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
so much, you two.
It was
Thank you. Have a great day.
pleasure.